Got a final from Jacksonville where Georgia outlasts Florida 24-17, earning its third straight win in the series. Jake Fromm, 20 of 30, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns. Georgia's third down efficiency was impressive, 12 of 18. Proves to be the difference here. The Gators were just 2 of 9 on third down, and Georgia wins another rivalry game in Jacksonville. And for more, let's welcome the man who just called this game, Gary Danielson. Gary, what a game you had there in Jacksonville. What's your reaction to how this game played out?
Yeah. A really good, competitive, tough football game. Everybody who played in this game has to be proud of the way they competed the whole game. Florida's a little bit too one-dimensional, I think, and that really caught up with them. Their 2 third-down conversions happened way late in the game when they were actually using 4 downs to get their conversions. Georgia had control of the game, but boy, that Florida team and Kyle Trask and that offense, they kept fighting. It was really a fun game to do.
Gary, what was more impressive to you, the job that UGA's offensive line did, not allowing 1 sack, or their defensive front basically shutting down the rushing attack, 19 carries for 21 yards?
Yeah, I'm not hugely surprised that Florida couldn't run the ball. They've not been able to effectively run the ball. They've popped a couple big runs late in games, against LSU. They've hit one. They hit one against South Carolina, I think. They've, not been a consistent running team. They cannot move people off the line of scrimmage. But to not allow that Florida pass rush to get a sack in this football game, I thought they'd have to get 2 or 3 sacks, get Georgia behind the chains. They did not have a 3-and-out in the game, not one in the game, and that really wore down the Florida defense. It's very fortunate that Kyle Trask and Dan Mullen put together an offense that can move the ball when they can't run it. It's very difficult to do, but as I said, they competed the whole game. And in this high-stakes game, this is what I love about my job. When you get in these games, when both teams know the winner of this game is in the driver's seat, controls the tiebreaker against the other, and to watch that type of performance, no turnovers, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was impressive. Georgia now first in the SEC East. And you look at Kyle Trask and Jake Fromm's numbers, they're pretty much spot on here. But Jake Fromm looked like the old Jake Fromm. What did you see from Fromm in this game, Gary?
Yeah. I actually graded his film against South Carolina when he had a tough so-called, 3-interception game. He only made 3 bad throws, and only one of them was intercepted. Missed a couple wide-open receivers. One was a miscommunication, a freshman receiver turning in when Jake thought he was going to do back shoulder, and one right off the hands of a receiver in overtime. So sometimes, it goes with the territory. You get to be the interview with Jamie if you win, but sometimes when you get the interceptions that are not always your fault. Had the other game against Kentucky in a downpour. The young receivers, it was going to take time. He does not have 4 comfortable receivers he had a year ago. They're not as explosive at wide receiver as they were a year ago. But the 2 transfers, getting Lawrence Cager and Eli Wolf, 2 guys that have been in a lot of wars in big-time football, were the guys he went to when he needed to in this game, and they came through for him.
Jake Fromm improves to 30-6 as a starter. All right, big picture, what's your big takeaway from this game there in Jacksonville?
I think Georgia has to get better. I think I listened to Kirby Smart talk after the game. He said, do you feel like you're in the driver's seat? No, heavens no. We got to get better. We got tough games ahead of us. Missouri's coming in. They're competitive. They have to travel to Auburn. They have to play. They played a good game here today, but I think they have to play an even better game to beat LSU or Alabama in the SEC championship if they get there.
Well, Georgia gets the job done on this Saturday. First place in the SEC East. Gary Danielson joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. Gary, as always, we appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And here's how it went down in Jacksonville. Georgia and Florida top 10 matchup, a rivalry game, a playoff elimination game. VMAC. Jake Fromm, last 2 games, 59% completion percentage.
Well designed.
1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and looking good here.
Play. No question, tight formation, both wide receivers tight to the line of scrimmage, crossing routes, saw Cager wide open, who had a career-like day today.
UGA up 22-10 as they get a 52-yard touchdown. Go for 2 here. And over the middle to Cager.
Again.
And it's complete. The guy comes back and makes an instant impact.
No question. I mean, his big play ability has really shown up throughout the season for Georgia.
UGA up 24-10. Cager 7 catches, $132 and a touchdown. But here comes Florida. First and goal, Kyle Trask to Freddie Swain, and it's a 24-17 game.
I mean, Trask kept fighting, but didn't have enough.
Third and 7. This was the story of the game. Third down conversion. 3rd and 7, pick up a first down there. 22 yards to Eli Wolf. Ices the game. They were 12 of 18 on third down.
I mean, you got a defender on his lower legs, standing in the pocket. That's why scouts love Jake Fromm, because he can make pro-like throws, and he did so throughout this ball game for 4 quarters, but that was a huge reception pass.
Jake Fromm bounces back 20 of 30, 279, 2 touchdowns, helping Georgia take over first place in the SEC East. Talking postgame with Jamie Erdahl.
Look at this unbelievable scene between Coach and Jake Fromm.
Guys, hold on.
I'm going to get Jake.
Don't knock her down. Hold on a minute.
That was quite the emotional moment with Coach. What did you just say to him?
He said, don't ever doubt Jake Fromm. And I'm just so thankful. I got a head coach who believes in me and believes in this team. And I'm so thankful to be here.
Did you feel like people were doubting you the last couple of weeks?
You know, yes and no. It's a lot of talk out there, and you know, you can choose what you want to listen to, and I choose not to listen to it. I'm here. I'm invested with this team, and I love my guys, and they came out and played great today.
What about the trust and the faith this coach and this team has in you on passing the ball on a 3rd down decision?
Yeah, that's a big time down. There's a lot riding on that 3rd down for sure. We did great on 3rd down all night. I just think it comes down to trust and faith, and Coach just had faith in it, and had faith in Eli. He went up, made a great play, and man, it's awesome.
You know how cool this game is. How special was it to bring in 2 transfers in Lawrence Cager and Eli Wolf and show up what they could do here?
They did. They showed up and balled out. Really thankful they're here on our team, and they came. They played in an unbelievable atmosphere. Really glad they're here on our team, and they played great.
2 passing touchdowns for Jake Fromm for the first time in more than a month. But the big takeaway here, again, is Georgia taking over first place in the SEC East, setting up, who's it going to be? Be LSU, going to be Alabama? We'll see about that. Limiting Florida to a season-low 21 yards on the ground.
Was huge.
Yeah, and we talked about how good that Georgia was on 3rd down, 12 of 18. Florida was not good, 2 of 9 on 3rd down conversions. Georgia covers the under cash at 47. Georgia now 7-2 against the spread in their past 9 SEC games. All right, back here with Bryant McFadden. Your instant analysis of this game is what?
Georgia put on their big boy pads today for this ball game. From start to finish, you look at what they did in the trenches offensively. Before this game kicked off, we talked about how well Florida's defense have been playing, especially putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks, sacking opposing quarterbacks. Today, 0 sacks. So you have to tip your hat to the offensive line, the job they did, not just protecting Jake Fromm, but what about running the football? 20 rushes for 279 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. This offensive line showed up big time today. We've talked about the talent they have. Many feel like this is the best offensive line unit in college football. And today they showed that skill set, and they dominated in the trenches, and that provided opportunities for Jake Fromm. This was the most balanced Georgia's offense has looked all year long against the toughest opponent defensively. And then when you look at their defense, anytime you can make an offense one-dimensional, like they did today, you will be successful. Granted, Florida, they haven't been known to be a outstanding running ball club, but we know they have the skill set to be able to do some positive things running the football. Today, 19 carries, 21 yards.
Yeah.
That's not winning football.
No.
At all. If it wasn't for Kyle Trask, this game definitely would have been out of reach. And that tells me a lot about Kyle Trask as a player, because he fought basically without any running game. So when I look at how this game was decided, and I said going into this ball game, the trenches would determine who will win this ball game.
Yeah.
And the team that outrushes the other clearly would win. Those stats stood firm.
How impressive, though, and you asked Gary the question, how impressive is it that Florida leads the SEC in sacks? they didn't get one against that uber-talented offensive line, which is something that you and I talked a lot about when we were in Athens, Georgia for the Notre Dame game.
Yep.
How good that offensive line. All of a sudden, the narrative, I feel like, is shifting because, okay, yep, that's a bad loss to South Carolina. They get out, beat Kentucky. But this is one of those prove-it games to beat Florida in a rivalry game, and look, here they are. How impressive was that, though, because you're going against one of the best defenses in Florida, and they were able to keep Jake Fromm clean.
Also, remember, they had two dynamic players return to the lineup.
They did.
Today.
They had Zuniga,
Florida,
and they had Grenard.
And Grenard, yeah, both returned, and we saw how they dominated when they were both in the lineup. But the skill set that UGA's offensive line has is something that you just can't coach. There's a good chance all 5 guys will play on Sunday at some point in time in their career. And when you have that type of talent that's disciplined and they're dialed in, the sky is the limit in which they can perform and dominate. And that's what we saw today. And I think when the sense of urgency is there for UGA, they can play like this. They need to have this type of urgency week in and week out. Every game should be all or nothing. Every game should be like a Game 7 mentality. That's what they should have because they can't afford to have any more mishaps, any more losses. Every game needs to be Game 7, and that's how they came into this ball game today, and they showed that from start to finish. And we know the talent is there, right? You don't question the talent. It's just about being consistent. When you look at teams like Alabama, Ohio State, they have that consistency week in and week out. You know every Saturday what you will see from their key players. So far, that was the concern with Georgia. Jake Fromm, right? When we were talking about this game leading up to kickoff, we had our concerns about Jake Fromm. Not saying that he can't get the job done. We just haven't seen it. So when you have not seen a certain skill set, no question, you question, can he deliver? And he stood up in the paint today, and he delivered. So you tipped your hats to Jake Fromm. But all of this would not be available if it was not for the offensive line.
Is Georgia a playoff team?
It depends.
To be determined?
Yeah, and I say to be determined because if they look like this week in and week out, yes, they would be a playoff team. But then when you have hiccups like South Carolina, you struggled against Kentucky. Granted, it was a very difficult ball game because of the weather. Yeah, you put up 21-0, but that game was back and forth for quite some time. No, but when you play like this against the team they played against, yes, I'll say they could be a playoff team, but to be determined. Let's see exactly what they do for their encore performance next week.
Yeah, if they can take care of business, they're going to be in the SEC championship game, and then it'll be LSU or it'll be Alabama.